another episode of Chats from the Blog Cabin. You know, the episode, the podcast, the YouTube channel where I invite people virtually into the Blog Cabin to chat about life. And today we're chatting with Casie, who is from an organization called Other Parents Like Me. And it's a very important organization. But Casie, before we start talking about this organization, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first off, thank you for inviting me. I felt really blessed to be invited, so thank you very much. I am a mom of 3 kids. That's my that's kind of my identity. I have a 22-year-old daughter, a 20-year-old son, and a 19-year-old son. Each of them have had some struggles in their journeys through teenagehood. My oldest actually has suffered with anxiety basically since she was born. So it was not a straight path. And when my oldest son was at 16, he really went off the rails with drug substances as a part of his path to kind of self-medicate, because in his heart he felt like nothing, which we did not know. And so that led to some suicidal ideation, some running away, holes in the walls, all sorts of crazy things. And my other 2 were navigating around it. My youngest navigated by being the good child, and in the end was hiding cutting. He's been in recovery from cutting for almost 2 years, and he's doing super well. So is my older son and my older daughter. They've kind of starting to navigate their path. It's not the path that I thought they were born. I thought they were going to do this, and then they were going to go to college, and then they were going to go get a job. And that kind of didn't follow through. And I've been married to my husband for almost 28 years. We've been together for 32, met in college. And just through all of the things and ways that we went to help each of our children, we really learned that we needed to kind of heal ourselves and be a part of the healing process, not just expect our children to do the healing, in the learning and all the stuff that comes with having kids who struggle. And so I started groups for my son. He went to a residential place, and just saw the transformation for myself leading the groups, for the parents who were attending the groups, and for my children, them seeing me actually not just focused on them, but focusing on myself and taking care of myself. They became empowered to take care of themselves, if that makes sense to you. But it and so I know it seems like that's so counterintuitive from what I was taught as like 22 years ago as a mom, like you do everything for them kind of thing. And I didn't realize how much they really watch us. And they were seeing me just crumbling, watching them crumble, and then they crumbled under the shame of watching me crumble. So it was just all this big cycle, and we're in such a better place now that everybody's working on being in a healing place.
So seeing all that and then watching you become this better person because you were helping yourself led you to start that organization, Other Parents Like Us. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, Other Parents Like Me was born with another mom who also has a child who has gone through the struggles, but he's 20 as well. My son and her son were on parallel paths. That's how we got to know each other. And I wanted to take those support groups that I was starting and doing. We had one, and within a couple months we had 8 just in 2020, so kind of COVID born. I knew after seeing that change, I wanted, like, why doesn't everybody in the world as a parent have a place to go to talk to have other parents who can actually say, in the space like we're doing right now, it really sucks in my house right now.
Mhm.
A lot of struggle, and I'm hiding, and I'm tired of hiding, but I'm not sure how much I can be open. So we wanted to have this safe space where people can come on Zoom and no one's going to watch them, and you're not walking into a room where you're like, oh, and you get to see people nodding their heads. So that's those. We have 17 support groups in a week. That's how. Someday we'll have 24/7.
Wow. And I agree with you because there's so much shame around mental health about, you know, keeping up with the Joneses, keeping up with appearances, and everything's supposed to be okay. And when people say they're not okay, there's so much shame surrounding about not being okay. And in our mental health, society places such a thing about you have to be okay. You have to just put a smile on and get through it and tough it out. And now we're realizing, especially since the pandemic, that you kind of have to stop and take stock in your mental health and say, hey, we're not okay. We have to get help. So at what point did you start? You said you started getting help. At what point did you stop and say, hey, I've got to do this for myself?
The real path for me, I mean, I have done therapy on and off throughout my years, but the real path started when my son went just significantly off the rails in 2018. And I was like, I'm a person who needs community. That's just who I am. And so I started going into, at the time, all I was told was to go into Al Anon. And for me as a parent, it didn't fit because I was a parent of a 16-year-old, and many of the parents in there, like there weren't very many parents, and the parents that were in there, they were 30 and 40-year-olds, and they've been doing this for a long time. And I'm like, oh my God, am I going to be doing this for like 30 years? Like that, I wasn't ready for any kind of that conversation. And then it was children of alcoholics or partners, and I'm like, you can like, well, the partner, like, you just leave, I can't leave my child, you can never talk to your parent again. I can't not talk to my 16-year-old. So I didn't feel connected. And I knew that's when I was like, my husband and I started doing therapy together so that we were holding each other up during it while we were in the beginning stages. Then that just blossomed from there. Of wow, I mean, just so much transformation has happened, and I've continued to do therapy and looking at my trauma from my childhood and how that affected who I am as a parent. How and know that I did and am doing the best I ever could as a parent. And I was and am doing the best way I can as a person and now a business owner. And that there's always room to learn. And it was such it was like literally taking the rocks of the backpack out of the backpack and like the backpack was light. I wasn't carrying all that weight, and letting go of the shame and having my kids like yeah, you can talk about it. I mean, because that's another part for us. Like if I talk about it, then like they're not gonna. Does that mean they're not gonna get into college because someone's gonna see me on a podcast?
That is so true. And I mean, I think if you've listened to for those that have listened or seen any of one of my greatest accomplishments to me is my middle daughter actually came to me one time and said, Mama, I want to come on and talk about mental health with you. She says, and alternatives to mental health, because a lot of times society pushes, well, you have mental health, here, take this pill. And they keep pushing pills on. They don't want to talk about it. And she says, I want to come on and talk about some of the alternatives that we can do. And I said, well, if we're going to do it right, we need to do it as a panel so that we're doing it the great way that we're doing it, so that we have a mental health professional on and we have other different perspectives on. We had I think a life coach. She was on it as well. My two older daughters are on it. They both have anxiety. One has bipolar depression things, and we actually had a really frank conversation about it. And I think when you're open to those conversations is when you actually learn from each other about it. And I applaud you as a parent of being open to talk about it and to be open to talk with your kids about it. Because I think with this generation of kids, we have to be open to listening to what they have to say and listening to what they're going through. Because a lot of parents, and like, I guess our parents and our generation are kind of like, oh, well, let's not talk about it. Let's push it underneath the rug.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it still happens when I try to talk about some of my childhood with my parents. But and what I told my kids is that my goal of continuing to do my own personal work, and for your dad to do his own personal work, and for us to do couples work, is that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, and you want to kind of talk about those things that you would like to have had happen differently in your childhood, that you have a parent who can be there wholly listening to you and accept that I was doing the best I can, and what you're saying is also true. And that's so hard as a parent, to be like, both things can be true.
Yeah. Very hard. But for them to know that they can come to you with no judgment, even though you have times where you have cry fest because you feel like, oh my gosh, I did this, or you have that guilt, but you know that you didn't do it on purpose. But it's a product of the way that you were brought up. Because I get you. I'm so right there with you. I totally get where you're coming from, because we're a product of the way we were raised. But the way we break that is to listen and to sit there and break the generational gap, and hope that our children learn from what we've learned and continue on with the process.
Yeah, I'm hoping by me putting some of the rocks down out of my backpack, they'll put even more rocks down, and then when they have kids someday, God, hopefully, that their kids will have even less in their backpack of the stuff just passed down, and they'll be able to have real conversations and be present for their kids sooner than I was able to be present.
That is so true. Now, what were your kids' reaction when you said you wanted to start this group?
They loved it. They love seeing me. So I retired as a flight attendant this past year, after flying for 26 years. And this became my thing. I have all the parents that I was running support groups. I took 25 of them with me, and they helped lead the support groups, because I could see like their transformation. So they want to give back to give transformation, and they can see and love seeing how inspired I am and how much I love. I mean, it's not very far, but coming to work every day. And they also feel like if this helps another family see like how to grow together sooner, then they feel that's a win too. So I think that's pretty, I'm pretty lucky. I'm pretty blessed by them. So
I love that. We're going to be right back after a brief commercial break, and we'll talk more about your organization.
Hi, my name is Joanna, and I would like to share with you a little bit about Shores of Grace, Shores Philly. It's a ministry located in Philadelphia. The portion of Shores that I volunteer for goes into Kensington, an area greatly impacted by homelessness and addiction. And we go and we take love, food, clothing, snacks, conversation. We believe that it is a way that we can meet people right where they are and show them the love of Jesus. We have seen lives changed in big ways and in small ways, and we have built wonderful relationships with the people in the community. We have big plans, more we'd like to do, and we would appreciate any support, either through prayer or through donation. If you would like to donate, you can go to shoresofgrace.com, and in the menu, click on donate. And we just ask that you put Philly in your donation comments. Thank you.
and we are back talking with Casie from Other Parents Like Me. So let's talk about what your organization does. How can
Okay.
you get involved?
So you go to OPLM.com, super easy. It is there's multiple things that you can do there. One is we have resources. I mean, because when I was going through this, I couldn't find everything, and I thought, like, I'll just Google it, I'll find something, and it was just impossible. So we have thousands of resources, including podcasts. Definitely make sure I add you on our podcast, because I think that's great that you are also having the conversation around mental health. And then that substances can be a part of that stuff. And so that's one thing, is we have lots of resources. We vet everything that we put on there, so that it's touched someone's heart before it goes into our website. And since I have 30 people to have hearts touched, they're always willing to share something new. We have supports that we have vetted as well. And then we have speaker talks. Every Thursday we have a speaker talk, which I think is super important, because I, as a parent, want to listen to the mental health professional, like you were talking about with your daughters. And I also want to be able to ask questions. And that's what the speaker talks, they're live. So they're like half an hour of talking, and then we get 45 minutes of asking questions, and that's phenomenal. But if you can't make it on a Thursday, we also have the recordings on the website, so you can always go watch them later. And then we have the 17 support groups as well. And then once a month, we have an expert panel. So not just one person to talk to, you get a whole group of them to talk to ask questions, and then that's recorded. We do have it does have a subscription cost. But once it's $49, you can go to all 17, however many during the week you want. We have things like we have an adoptive group. We have a group on trauma, that's intergenerational trauma. We have regular groups. We have 2 men's groups, which are very well attended, which is amazing. We have groups for parents who have kids already in programs, because that's what their child fell into. That was the child's path. Young adults, and we talk about gratitude. That's another one of our groups, which I love, because you think, like, how do you have gratitude on this journey? But you do, because you really like all these aha moments just leave so much gratitude. But you can come on for 3 months and just try it out for free. And then, if you don't want to keep going to the support groups, but you want to stay and come to the speakers, that stays free, or you can pay $49 and be able to watch the recordings and go to the groups anytime. But that's kind of our mission, and we don't let, there's no cost is not a barrier. So we have lots of financial aid folks who are in there, because we don't want anybody to not be able to find help.
Wow, I can't even imagine going through at the very beginning, you starting this journey, saying, like you said, there's not a lot of stuff out there for people about mental health online. You can stumble through and you might find something, but it's not reputable stuff. Like somebody may write something and they're writing it to sell you a book, but you're offering a lot of these resources for these parents for free of charge. Like, you can listen to a speaker for free of charge, which is amazing, because a lot of places don't do that. They require you to pay a subscription. So I really appreciate that. I love that you're offering that to parents.
Thank you. Yeah, it's important to us, and we also want to acknowledge that not everybody wants to, do all the other stuff, but they still want to go to a speaker, and they still want to go look at the resources, and I think that's important. That's really important for me.
Is there one particular comment that you've gotten from somebody that you've worked with that's kind of stand out in your mind since you started?
Yeah, my favorite is as we grow together, our family, as we get stronger, our families get stronger.
Oh, I love that.
That's that real, and people walk away saying, I came in crying and I walked out laughing.
I love that. I
So
love that.
there's
Now,
there's so much power in seeing everybody shake their heads, like just like you and I when I'm telling my story. You're like, "Yep, I get it. Yep, I get it. Yep, I get it," and the whole group is like 20 people going, "Yep, I get it. Yep, I get it."
yep, I get it
Powerful.
100%. I mean, because mental health is something that we need to focus more on because I think with the generation that's coming up now, they're more willing to talk about mental health. And I think we need to take a cue from them to talk more about it. Because, like you said, our generation was taught to stuff it down, to hide our feelings. And even across cultures as well, because different cultures are taught not to show emotion.
Yes, they are.
And that's one of the things that even in the talk that we had, the mental health panel, because we're from a very multicultural family, as you saw in the opening, my husband's from Mexico. So it's the Hispanic culture, they don't talk at all about their feelings. So it's kind of hard for my husband to understand when my girls are talking that what they're talking about, because he doesn't quite understand it yet. So it's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It is. It's hard.
So have you noticed that more cultures are more open to discussing, or have you noticed it? You have noticed that?
Oh, yes. And our goal is to eventually have ones that are based in different languages, so that uh, it from what I've understood from speaking with some folks who are from different cultures, it's a little different and a little easier when it's in their own language as well, to start to cross into thinking differently. And so that is one of our goals, and Spanish is our first one. Our first one we're aiming for, because it's there's a lot of folks here in the United States who speak Spanish.
So your group is mainly for parents. Have you thought about doing a subgroup for the kids to share their stories to help each other?
Yes, we are. That's kind of our navigation is, let's get parents comfortable. We also would like to, our next goal is to also have a space for siblings, because like I said, as we grow stronger, our family gets stronger. Well, that does include that there are sometimes siblings in the mix who are part of the fallout, and to give them a space as well. And there is, which is very interesting, lots more support for the kids who are struggling versus the siblings and the parents. So that's our focus right now is, to have that conversation be parent forward and then sibling forward, and someday maybe even family forward, where everybody can come in together and just, chat. But it's a it's still a work, we're still discovering, like, what do people like? What do people want? Yeah.
Yeah, because you're right. Because if a sibling, if what they say, the squeaky wheel always gets oiled, that sibling
Yeah.
doesn't cause the problems is being forgotten because they're the good ones. So they're kind of, even though by no fault of their own, they're kind of forgotten because they're the good one, and they may feel like they're forgotten and they're struggling with everything going on, and maybe later on their mental health is suffering as well. So
Yeah, we had that. We have that personal experience here, and we did not know. We thought that, yeah, well, he's doing okay, and he wasn't doing okay. He was trying not to cause any extra waves, and just quietly, hurting himself to find a way to let the pain in his life of what he was seeing go. And yeah, so the sibling part is really important, to start including them in the conversation. But I do think in order to get the parents comfortable, the parents have to be. I mean, to bring siblings in, the parents have to be comfortable first. To, like, okay, it's okay, take care of myself. You know what? My kids need to do this too.
yeah. Because honestly, I think when the kid struggles, the parents feel like failures. They feel like it's something they've done, and we need to take that stigma off of the failure as parents.
Yeah, We do. There's a really interesting statistics that I recently read, and 1 in 3 parents will get their kids help. The other 2/3 don't want to because they're afraid. But if they do, that someone somewhere, which by the way in the past definitely has happened, says that it's because they were bad parents. And so trying to cross that time of that being brought forward so much, like, well, you've heard it. I'm sure you've heard it with like anybody who has a kid who has an addict and who has an addiction issue. And I know I was that judging parent. Mm-hmm. A friend of ours, a sub at the school went crazy on my son one day. And I was like, you need to go and clean up your own stuff at home. And she had a child struggling with addiction, which we all knew. And if I could go back and give her grace and just say, hey, I can understand how this can come out sideways. Let's just take a moment. Could you say, you're sorry to my son, and what can I do to support you? It's hard.
I love what you just said. Give each other grace. That is so important as a parent, as humans, to give each other grace instead of being so quick to judge each other.
Yeah. And until you are the family who has the struggles, you just don't understand how much grace the other people in your lives need.
For you to go through everything that you've gone through and say, you know what, I'm going to make a space for other people to be able to come to and to help heal other families, that to me is absolutely amazing. That's a shining example of giving others grace.
Thank you. I never want to keep from anyone all the beauty and the gratitude and the amazing stuff that I've learned on this journey, because there's just so much that we can learn, and so much that we can see and like forgive ourselves for, but you need someone else to give you that permission.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and honestly, that permission, you also need to give yourself that permission to feel the way you feel, because I think that's what holds a lot of us back for asking for help, is giving ourselves that permission to say, hey, it's okay not to be okay.
Yes. I wrote on other things, I wrote a blog about that I've learned it's okay to not be okay. And that's a gift.
Yes, it's a huge gift.
Mm-hmm. To like say, okay, today I woke up and I don't know why, but life is sucking right now. And I'm just going to go and take care of myself, do a lot of extra self-care today, and allow this sucky feeling to be there, and know that it will pass. If I'm not fighting it, it passes.
Mm-hmm. Instead of sitting in it, you just allow it to, okay, I'm going to feel it, but I'm not going to wallow in it. I'm not going to stuff it down. I'm just going to feel it in the moment, and then I'm going to, okay, go on with it. I think that's one of the reasons why Chats in the Log Cabin started too. Because I'm a very introverted person, and the pandemic started, and I'm like, I need to get out and do stuff. I want to talk to people. So this is how it happened. And let's talk about, since we're talking about healing through sharing, because you're healing me right now while you're sharing your story. Let's talk about
that. There is, and it's still in the process of being researched and understood. We actually have a researcher on board our staff because I know I can feel it. I know I've seen how powerful peer-to-peer support is. It's really healing to have someone else shake their head yes, that they get it and they don't question. They're just like, yep, been there. And being in the vacuum of a maybe a with a therapist or family therapy or going to where you're doing like group therapy where you're run by a therapist, we tend to look to them to fix us. We tend to not look inward, but there's something powerful about having someone further on the journey, someone in the middle of the journey, someone new in the journey, because all of that, seeing all of that helps you gain power. It's just amazing and you heal more. If you're further on the journey and you question yourself, right? You're like, oh, I still did that thing with my kid. I still screamed at my kid. I still did that thing. And then you're with someone who's in the beginning and you're listening to them. You're like, oh, no, I'm not there anymore. I am farther than I thought. And then if you're here and you're like crumbling, just crumbling because you're in the beginning and you're like, this is not what I thought my life was going to be. And you see this person over here and they're smiling and they're laughing and they're crying and they're sharing all the awful things that they still do. And you're like, oh, okay, I'll be there someday. And that's so healing to witness the length of the journey and like other people show it, being willing to show and tell their story.
Yeah, I so agree, and I think the healing moment for me, because like I said before, with when I grew up, and you told me you listened to the podcast about my sister, that when I grew up, we didn't talk about our feelings, and with my girls, I chose to change that, and my girls are 27, 24, 25, and 20, and so we talk about that. And I went out this summer with my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's 27, and she's married. And I went out to visit her in California. And she said, Mama, I don't think of you as my mom. She says, I think of you as my friend who happens to be my mom. And to me, that is like the biggest healing journey that I could possibly have had with her, because we talked about mental health. We talked about different things that was going on in her life. We talked about, the use and, the anxiety that she felt with it because she's getting her PhD. And we talked about her sisters and things like that. And we talked about all the different things that said some of her friends can't talk to their parents about, but she felt like she can come to me and talk to me about, because she has that open relationship. The fact that she looks at me like a friend instead of who happens to be her mom. And to me, that was healing, because I don't have that type of relationship with my mom. And I just hope that when she ever has kids, that she has an even better relationship with her kids than her and I have.
Mm-hmm. She starts open. She's open from the beginning. Yeah.
Because I've always told them, I was like, you can come to me and talk. And I had to learn at the very beginning that I had to make our core family the priority instead of the other family around us. Because my other sister made my mom and dad and everybody else, the extended family, more the priority than her core family. It was everybody else too. But no, it was like whatever all the girls wanted were first, and then everybody else came afterwards. And I think that showed them that I made them a priority first. So, but to me, you're a friend who happens to be my mom.
I love that. Wow, that's so powerful. So powerful, Melissa. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, so hopefully your kids will get to that place, because you talk about how open you are with, them, how they're open with you now and talking about their struggles.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't mean we're perfect. None by a long shot. Like, my daughter and I were a little upset with each other the other day, but the conversation is different. We're navigating through it. We're, you know, checking in like, well, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm feeling. And like sitting there and going, both these things can be true is really hard. It's so hard to acknowledge, like, she has a right to those feelings. I want her to feel this, but she has a right to those feelings.
Yeah.
And then she's learning that, okay, my mom has a right to her feelings. I may not agree with her. So for both things to be true is I think one of the most powerful lessons I've learned on this. And it doesn't mean that if that's true, or that that's their truth, that it also doesn't mean that I have to fix it,
Mm-hmm.
or I have to correct them, or that if I allow them to say that's their truth, that means that somehow I'm like this bad, that I'm the bad guy. Just because that's true for them does not mean that I was not doing the best that I could.
And see, that's me. I'm the bad guy. That's would be my go-to. I'm the bad guy. I'm the one. It's my fault. Because that was drilled into me as a kid. That was my fault. That's my fault. Now, have you noticed that your communication is different with your boys than it is with your daughter?
Yeah, actually, it's very interesting. My communication is unique for each. Nobody is a straight path. So what I thought what I knew with my first one didn't work with my second. What I thought what I learned with it both did never work with my third, and and sometimes it's easier to chat with one versus the other depending on the day. But yeah, no, I try really hard to stay focused that they're each individuals, and which I'm sure you've probably felt this is so hard. Because you still like do this little compare thing, and you're like, oh, if you could just be for this thing like this one, and if you could be like this one for this part, like we could just take all these three and put them into one human.
Yep.
It'd be easier, but that doesn't work that way.
Yep, that is so true. And it's amazing how they can be all raised by the same person and they all can have different personalities.
Yes, isn't it crazy? Yeah, you're like, what did I do differently?
Yeah. And especially when, like with me, we have three of the same, same sex. We have three girls and they're all different, totally different personalities, totally different, So it's amazing how they're all different.
Yeah, I'm taking that moment and not going, okay, oh, you could just be a little easier on this. Or the other one could just be a little easier.
And what can affect one way can affect another one totally different.
Yeah, so you have a different learning set for each one.
Yep, so true. I learned very quickly in school that what one teacher would work for one child may not work for the other children.
Oh yeah, and having to pivot and bob and weave, right? Because it's a big group of kids.
Yep. So true. Now our time is almost up. Is there one little nugget before we talk about where people can find you at through social media and everything, that you would like to leave us with? One little word of wisdom.
I would say that it's okay that you made mistakes. and it's okay to take care of yourself around whatever, and to be selfish sometimes. That's not easy. I know that sounds easy. That's not easy. All those three things are not easy.
Especially when your child's hurting. That's the least, as a parent, that's the hardest thing to do, is to worry, trying to take care of yourself when your child's hurting.
Yeah. It's important to fill. I always talk about that it's important to fill your gas tank. It's really, if you don't fill your gas tank when there's a bad day, it's going to be your being able to stay regulated with that child having a bad day is not going to go well if you don't have a full, self-care tank to kind of be there and present when they're struggling.
That is so true. And then you may end up causing more problems with adding more fuel to the fire.
Yes, you get it, Melissa.
I totally get it.
You get it.
Now,
Totally.
where can people find you for more information?
So you can go to, as you put up, the website, OPLM.com. You also can find us on social media. So we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and there you go. Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. We have it's really beautiful, the people who do our social media. I really feel so touched by them because they always try to give little brief nuggets too. So I absolutely recommend that you follow those things and just take those nuggets if that's like your first step forward into, doing a little bit for yourself or understanding a little bit for your kid. That's those are our easiest ways.
And Casie, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing about other parents like me. This is a great organization, a much needed organization, especially for parents. Guys, mental health is so important, and it's so important that we have this conversation. So many times we just want to stuff it down and don't want to talk about it, but we need to talk about it. We need to make sure that these subjects aren't taboo, that when our kids are struggling, we struggle, and we need to get out there and we need to talk about it. It's very important. So if your child's struggling, get help for yourself, get help for your child. I'm telling you, it will make 100% difference in your life. I'm speaking from experience. And
Yeah,
me too. So I will put in the show notes all the links where you can find Casie, and I'm going to go check out her site as well because I think it's so needed. What's the word I'm looking for? Oh, my mind just drew a blank. Resource. There you go. Resource. A resource for even if you're not a parent, if you're still struggling with mental health. I think with all the people that you have coming on and topics, I still think it can help people out as well.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right, guys, we'll see you on the next chat from the Blog Cabin. Bye.
Bye.